Hi, welcome back. Installment number I. Just wanted to say, doing this, I am learning a lot of things. Like, growing my kids up, I meant. Probably would have never finished the book. I would have probably gotten discouraged. I probably would have gotten impatient because maybe they were being distracted or distracting. And it would have never persisted. So, no matter how unpopular or silly or whatever somebody else might think of what's going on here, I'm actually going through an active process of completing what I set out to do. It's interesting. So, that's what we do. We're having fun. Jimmy Breslin said, "When you stop drinking, you have to deal with this marvelous personality that started drinking in the first place." Subtracting addiction. We've all got one. An addiction, that is. There are the well-known addictions: drugs, alcohol, smoking, gambling. There are the less known, but getting more well-known each day addictions like food, sex, romance, work, religion, spirituality. Almost anything good can be turned bad by obsession and lack of moderation. Some people are addicted to their negative thoughts and the feelings those thoughts produce. Some minimize their addictions by calling them bad habits. Others deny addiction and simply become addicted to denial. Many who wouldn't dream of having an addiction are addicted to normalcy. We all have one. An addiction is something that has more power over you than you do. If it runs you, it's an addiction. If you're not sure it's addiction, stop doing it. Like I want to get back on these Zen books real bad. Yeah. If you can stop for an indefinite period of time, then it's a preference, not an addiction. If you can't or can't conceive of giving it or them up, that's addiction. The old word for addiction was temptation. Lead us not into temptation, Jesus said. My temptation is quiet, Yeats said. I resist everything except temptation, Oscar Wilde said. One of the most successful programs for overcoming addiction is the 12 steps. I've got about a billion things I could say, but I won't. Have been adapted to every known addiction. The program has benefited millions. The 12 steps. 1. We admitted that we were powerless over our addiction, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of this higher power, as we understood him, her, or it. 4. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5. Admitted to our higher power, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6. We're entirely ready to have our higher power remove all these deficits of character. 7. Humbly asked our higher power to remove our shortcomings. 8. Made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9. Made direct amends to such people whenever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. And 10. Continued to make personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11. Sought, through prayer and meditation, to overcome our to improve our conscious contact with our higher power as we understood him, her, or it, praying only for knowledge of our higher power's will for us and the power to carry that out. And 12. Having had an spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry out this message to others and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Like I said, that the whole study of this structure I have some very conflicting opinions, only and mostly because the group itself has very cult origins and cult behavior, and they're really not interested in you taking charge of your own healing. So if these steps work for you in your way, and you're ready to work on whatever step you feel to work on, then do so. You don't need the group to help you do that. Just having an accountable friend to help you is the same. So take this as you will. Some people swear by this group, and I did. I went to this group at first for a while too, but after a while, when you're ready to break free and do some improvement, I got to feeling like dazed. All right, they're holding me down, they're holding me back. So, but that's to each their own. I like personal growth. I don't like overcoming my addictions. That's the problem with these 12 steps. All right, never mind. Geez, we weren't supposed to get sidetracked. Once you overcome your addiction, you know how you can overcome all things. The impossible becomes possible, the undoable doable, the unmanageable manageable. Overcoming an addiction even eases the process of releasing our addiction to life at the end of our time. In the process of overcoming addiction, you can learn discipline, self-confidence, humility, appreciation, self-love, and forgiveness. Important lessons, these. That's why I consider addiction one of the master teachers in disguise. The Bible in the book of James chapter 1, verse 12 says, "Blessed is the man that endureth temptation, for when he is tried, he shall receive the crown of life." And a ring Lardner said, "A good many young writers make the mistake of enclosing a stamped, self-addressed envelope, big enough for the manuscript to come back in. This is too much of a temptation to the editor." Oh, that's that's sad. Okay, 2, 3. Wait a minute. I forgot to count ahead. So not only do you get a sidetrack, but you also get a, oops. Oh, this one's gotta be longer. It doesn't. It does. Because look how long that dang last section is. Well, if we don't sidetrack anymore. Oh my God. What would my audience do if I did it right? Stay? God knows. Then they'd have expectations of me. Ugh. I don't work good under pressure. Thomas Huxley. Perhaps the most valuable result of all education is the ability to make yourself do the thing you have to do, when it ought to be done, whether you like it or not. It is the first lesson that ought to be learned, however early a man's training begins. It is probably the last lesson that he learns thoroughly. Depression! Yay, depression! The word depression is used to describe two distinct maladies. One use is to express disappointment. They didn't return my phone calls. I'm depressed. Or how depressing. The coffee machine is out at Cafe Olé. We also feel this mild kind of depression in the normal cycle of life's ups and downs. The other use of the word depression is medical. It describes a physical illness caused by biological, yes, usually genetic, imbalance in the body. The simple solution for disappointment depression is get up and get moving. Physically move, do, act, get going. Depression is often caused by a sense of not having accomplished enough. We question the usefulness of what we've achieved in the past and doubt our ability to achieve anything useful in the future. Self-doubt robs us of our energy. We feel depressed. We look at all we want to do. It seems overwhelming. We tell ourselves, I can't do all of this, and instantly fulfill our own prophecy by not even trying. The energy drops even more. and the depression deepens. When we eventually feel we must do something, there seems to be so much left undone from our previous inertia that we become confused. The confusion leads to indecision. The indecision leads to, oh, what's the use? And more inaction, which leads to, well, you guessed it. At some point, the cycle must be broken by action. Do something, anything physical. If the house is a mess, pick up one thing, any one thing, and do something with it. Put it away, throw it out, send it to your brother, donate it to charity, something, anything. Pick up one more thing. Continue. Eventually you will have a clean house. Before eventually, however, the depression will begin to lift. Yes, disappointment depression is a master teacher. Its message is get moving. The energy is here, use it. When you start to move, the energy will meet your movement, but first you must move. Medical or clinical depression is not caused by disappointment or lack of action, but a biological imbalance in the chemistry of the brain. This form of depression takes a bit more explaining, but there are so many misconceptions about it. Here's my story. Over an almost 30-year period, I had attended more personal growth workshops, visited more healers, meditated more hours, taken more vitamins, and not only read but written more self-help books than almost anyone I knew. Nevertheless, I was not happy. I wasn't even satisfied. I wasn't even simply bored. I was miserable. By mid-1993, I was ready to try anything, even psychiatry. I called Dr. Harold H. Bloomfield, MD, one of my co-authors on How to Survive the Loss of Love, told him I wanted to make a professional appointment and to meet him at his office. We spoke for an hour. Finally, he said, "Peter, you've been suffering." Yeah, that's what I was doing, although I had never applied the word suffering to myself. His official diagnosis, depression. Like many people, I had some serious misconceptions about depression. I didn't like depression. I didn't want depression. But then I guess you don't get to pick your disease. To my surprise, I learned that depression was a physical illness, a biochemical imbalance in the brain, most likely caused by certain neurotransmitters, the fluid in the brain that the brain uses to communicate with itself, being pumped up way too soon, or being pumped away too soon. When there were too few of a certain neurotransmitter, brain functions become inharmonious, and the complex mental, emotional, and physical manifestations of depression result. These manifestations can include a down feeling, fatigue, sleep disorders, physical aches and pains, eating irregularities, listening to Julio Iglesias, irritability, difficulty concentrating, feeling worthless, guilt, addictions, attempts to self-medicate the pain away, self-deleting thoughts, and my favorite, anhedonia. Anhedonia means the inability to experience pleasure. The original title of Woody Allen's Annie Hall was anhedona, the perfect description of Woody Allen's character. It was also the description of my life. Although I had spikes of happiness, nothing gave me pleasure for any length of time. The concept of just being was entirely foreign to me. My intensive self-help seeking since 1965 had been my attempt to obtain the simple enjoyment of living that many people seem to have naturally. All my attempts had been unsuccessful. I had a physical illness that prevented even the best-built self-esteem structure from standing very long. In the book Harold and I wrote later, How to Heal Depression, the chapter explaining this phenomenon is entitled, The Power of Positive Thinking Crashes and Burns in the Face of Depression. You can plant all the personal growth seeds you want, but they become like seeds that fell on the rock in Jesus' parable in Matthew 13:5-6. Some seed fell in the rocky places, where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But then, when the sun comes up, the plants are scorched and they withered because they had no root. That's what depression had wrought inside of me. One vast barren rock garden. Without the garden, I also learned that most depression is inherited. I realized that if I looked around my family tree and saw lots of nuts, there was probably a good chance I was not a passion fruit. Which was just what I thought I was. Since depression is a genetic biological illness like diabetes or low thyroid, it wasn't a lack of character, laziness, or anything I could snap out of. It would be like trying to snap out of a toothache. This meant that the dozen other causes for depression given to me by the ex-cult leader and other quacks in his cult were invalid too. Footnote. Where's your footnote, sweetheart? I see your footnote, but I do not see your footnote. I remember now he took back the rights of this book. Well, he made a footnote, but he didn't keep it. Ha ha ha. What? Well, that's a first. Well, the point is, the bad cult guy, hope I didn't lose my page, the bad cult guy had the rights of the book, and then he, I'm gonna it's gonna get too long for me to read that long bit. Okay. Anyway. So, I would like to reread that because he's showing here that he grew up. And I really do like this section a lot. So, okay. Or something I could snap out of. It would be like trying to snap out of a toothache. This meant the dozens of other causes for depression given to me by John Roger and other quacks in his cult were invalid too. I was ready to consider what the good Dr. Bloomfield recommended I do about my depression. He explained several options, which included 2 short-term talk therapies, cognitive therapy and interpersonal therapy, and antidepressants, as in Prozac. I, who had been programmed by John Roger to think drugs were the devil's own tool, thought, as many people did, that Prozac was the devil itself. The Church of Scientology had done a brilliant job programming the media and, hence, the general public into believing not only was Prozac unsafe, it was astoundingly unsafe. They accomplished this for whatever reason, by finding a handful of people who had done some aberrant things. Scientology then presented the aberrant behavior of these people as typical side effects of Prozac. It was a thoroughly imbalanced and unscientific presentation. More than 5 million people take Prozac in this country every day, 10 million people worldwide. Millions have used Prozac since its introduction in 1987. It is among the safest of, I wonder if he's a goddamn spokesman. It is among the safest of all prescribed medications. No one has ever died from taking it. Though hundreds die a year from the allergic reactions of penicillin, or from eternal bleeding caused by aspirin, still, I don't like the idea of taking a pill that would, as Newsweek pointed out on its cover, give me a different personality. I didn't necessarily like the personality I had, but I also didn't want to become a Stepford writer. Harold explained that antidepressant medications do not give one a new personality. There is no high connected to them. They are not tranquilizers, pet pills, or mood elevators. All antidepressants do is keep the brain from pumping away certain neurotransmitters too quickly. This allows the neurotransmitters to rise to the appropriate levels, which lets the brain function harmoniously again. Sounds like a doctor's lying, too. An analogy might be that antidepressants plug a hole in the rain barrel so the barrel can fill. The depression lifts because the brain's naturally produced neurotransmitters are allowed to rise to natural levels. Antidepressant medications then do not add. You know what? Shh. I can't. can't go on with that. All right, you can hear my reading is fading out because I'm like, quit selling me, quit selling me, quit selling me. So we're just going to follow our instincts. He said he started taking it. He did not feel exactly better, but it was as though the bottom of my emotional pit had been raised. In the past, small setbacks had caused a toboggan ride all the way down to an emotional state best described as, what's the point of living? In the choice between life and death, I could reluctantly choose life, with about the same enthusiasm as Michelangelo's Adam on the Sistine Chapel receiving a spark of life from God, and crawl back up to normal again. Normal for me, however, was depression. As it turns out, I had long-term, low-grade depression since I was 3. This depressed state was my default for normal. On top of this, I would have from time to time major depressive episodes lasting from 6 months to more than a year. When the two of these played together, that is, played havoc together on me, what I had was known in psychiatric circles as a double depression, a fate I would not wish upon my worst enemy. Excuse me. After I'd taken Prozac for 2 weeks, I felt the floor of my dungeon had risen even higher. By the 3rd week, I had for the first time some level ground on which to build my life. I was still concerned how firm it was. So I walked across it lightly as one does across a piece of land that was once quicksand. That is the last image I had. That was the image I had. Any good deed, any positive project, any accomplishment I placed on the quicksand where, like Janet Leigh's car in Psycho, would slowly, painfully, inexorably sink. And now I inched a little forward toward the center of my land, seeing how firm the terror actually was. It was a great victory when I could jump up and down on what was once my pool of emotional quicksand, and now it was finally safe to build there. What I built, of course, was up to me. If I built depressing things, my life would still be depressing. But now I had a chance to build something stable, something reliable, something good. I also began feeling spiritual for the first time. I felt connected to God in a solid, unpretentious way. The discovery of this connection was no great hooray, hooray, I found God, but a slow clarification, like watching a Polaroid picture develop. It all seemed so natural and simple. It had nothing to do with John Rogers' intricate cosmology I had so carefully memorized. And, just as so many other great teachers had said, the kingdom of God was within. I also found myself simply enjoying things, ordinary, everyday, no big deal activities, were pleasurable. I remember sitting in a chair waiting for the table at a restaurant, and I was enjoying just sitting there. I felt so contented, all alone, sitting there. It was almost like being in love. In fact, it seemed that I was falling in love with myself. Are you depressed? Here's a checklist from the National Institutes of Health. On this checklist, they also give symptoms of mania, which is the irrational, unpredictable upper swing of manic depression. Excuse me. I never had mania, but I did overachieve as a compensation for the depression. I was trying to prove my worthiness by outward overachievement. Doesn't work. According to the National Institutes of Health, a thorough diagnosis is needed if 4 or more of the symptoms of depression or mania persist for more than 2 weeks or are interfering with your work or family life. With available treatment, 80% of the people with serious depression, even those with the most severe forms, can improve significantly. Symptoms can be relieved usually in a matter of weeks. Symptoms of depression can include a persistent sad or empty mood, loss of interest or pleasure in ordinary activities, including sex, decreased energy, fatigue, being slowed down, sleep disturbances, eating disturbances, difficulty concentrating, remembering, or making decisions, feelings of guilt, unworthiness, helplessness, thoughts of death, or making yourself be that way, irritability, excessive crying, chronic aches and pains that do not respond to treatment. In the workplace, symptoms of depression often may be recognized by decreased productivity, morale problems, lack of cooperation, safety problems, absenteeism. How about the sad look on their face? How about that? You could see the lack of light in their eyes. You could see the corners of their mouths. And anyway, people don't look at people anymore. La 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 la. These symptoms are not just life. If you've had 4 or more of them for more than 2 weeks, all right, I can't do this. I'm tired of this. All right, he suggests St. John's wort. I can't. I just freaking can't go through reading that right now. It's just too much untruth in it, that or something. I don't know. I'm the crazy one. Alright. Alright, we'll come back with the anew, and there you go.